Alrighty, welcome back to Tea Time.
With GCaSL.
Woo!
This is G, I'm a soul.
So last week we talked about Doomsday.
This week we're talking about Hysteria.
So this is going to tie into that a little bit.
Yes, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Hysteria. When people react poorly to a situation because they don't have an appropriate response to a situation, or alternatively, the word of mouth travels incorrectly and people pick up on the wrong keywords, make incorrect conclusions, and then spread those conclusions, and then things go wildly out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they said that bird flu was killing people, avian flu, and it killed like 2 people that already had the flu. When Godzilla attacked Tokyo, and, all of those people ran all over the place, and how many people died getting trampled to death because, slower traffic didn't keep right?
So you notice that at that point, Hysteria to some extent does serve a purpose as well.
Mm-hmm. Fight or flight. So, before we start the episode, we should address that the real problem with Hysteria and the real fault there was the goddamn Japs. Burn that down.
Okay, so welcome back. All right, so hopefully you have yourself a cup of tea. And today we're going to be talking about Hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we mentioned the definition a little bit. It's ultimately, if you look at it from a biological perspective, it's a little bit of an overstimulation where
it triggers your fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's an extreme enough situation, it turns to flight. Because not everybody's brave enough to go toe-to-toe with Godzilla. Except for Mothra.
Or maybe the Kraken. Hmm?
Maybe the Kraken. If the Minotaur was a little bit bigger, maybe.
Yeah, imagine that. Like there's
or the Kraken.
If they took him to court, the jury, Hulu and all of them. So, Hysteria, something that in I think the past, and you mentioned before, even nowadays, it's mentioned or it's utilized in almost everything. I mean, Hysteria is used for war. Hysteria is used exclusively with the media, such as that one channel.
Sensationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Sensationalism drives Hysteria as a selling point for monetary gain, because if everything was kittens and puppies in the media, no one would keep watching the media. But as long as people are dying and houses are burning down,
it's good news.
It's good news.
Fox News.
Fox.
Fox News.
Well, no. Fox News is more like, terrorists, they want to kill you, they want to eat your babies, and they want virgins and fire.
So there's a fundamental aspect of Hysteria, right?
Mm.
What they've done is they've identified certain labels, certain images, and they purposefully show them to you again and again and again.
Well, they have to do that to associate imagery with the ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So really, with kind of tying back to events in time that people have used as a hysterical thing, 9/11, over-publicized. Not over-publicized, but was used as a tool to identify terrorism.
And they kept showing the planes hitting the tower again.
Over and over and over. And everybody, now the Twin Towers are a symbol, and whenever someone says terrorist, it's instilled in your brain that you have an idea of what a terrorist looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's changed from when it was before that. Because if you go prior to 9/11, the idea of a terrorist before that could have been any number of things. Like, there were terrorists in Cambodia, there are terrorists in Ireland blowing up churches and for freedom, and
well,
terrorists.
Also, that's the label, right? I mean, we were.
This is the one they can use, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like Boba Fett, he understands that better than anybody else. Is he a freedom fighter or is he a terrorist?
He's just misunderstood, looking for money.
Mm-hmm.
Really, hired guns. Speaking of hired guns, goons, and general anarchy, the military. This was used to identify terrorists as a political tool. So when people associate, they think about the war on terror, you get that look, right? And it's the same one that's transferred down, trickled into the population. And the way that this is relevant is because if that's your only source of information and you don't have a secondary source of information that's been cited, and you do all the research on a situation, your only source is propaganda. And you're going to only come to these conclusions, and that's going to be what you draw on when you come to a situation like that. And that's why little old ladies get off the plane when Chima does.
And I'm a nice guy.
Chima's not going to blow up any planes. Well, there was a lot of people, sick people, criticized, and still are, I bet you, over this because of the...
Well, I know immediately
visual.
right afterwards, I think within the first week and even month, Sikhs were being literally assaulted and killed.
Yeah.
Because of how they looked. And the fact of the matter is, how we look is... personally, I don't think it matters who it was, even if, let's say, these people were Muslims. You shouldn't be killing first and asking questions later.
Of course not.
Right.
Every religion's got their own, sect of fanatics, and I'm not saying that Muslims are any way connected to Sikhism, but that's just the idea that got into their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And
And see, this image was radicalized, too. It was made so that,
oh yeah,
this is our enemy, we need to know who the enemy is, and they use that to scare people into wanting to go to war,
true. It's a tactic.
Fear-mongering.
Fear-mongering. Part of hysteria. Harnessing hysteria.
So then you notice here that hysteria, used appropriately, is a fundamental tool in being able to make people do what you need them to do, being able to manipulate people.
It's true. That's what it's come down to. Well, especially when it's used in the media, in relation to the war and in relation to politics. And back to the media, when they do it generally day to day, they're abusing hysteria now. Oh, down the street there was this terrible fire and it burned down all of half of the house, and no one was hurt.
Exactly, so they get you excited about it.
But they took an hour to say that, and then they showed you footage of fire and firemen with their burliness putting out over-grandization. Fuck it.
Over-grandizing.
Yeah. It's abuse of the word. Like, the way that people abuse the word love. It's become a thing where people have harnessed this, and they've instilled terrorism as its own entity now. They've created this idea of terrorism.
Which is funny, because you can't kill an idea, right?
No, you
so
can't.
The war on terrorism.
It's so generalized that they can use this generalization to do whatever they want for their own ends. What was that? Colonizing?
Oh, yeah, neocolonialism.
Yeah, there was a thought that America's neo-colonizing the Middle East by destroying all of it and then using the oil money as reparations for them to rebuild it with democracy.
We just destroyed everything. Now, if you can pay us, we accept natural resources.
Yeah.
We'll rebuild everything for you. Yes.
But that can't be proven. However, it is very clear that that's what they're doing there is they've over-sensationalized this and they've created the terrorist idea. And you need to relate that back to you and what comes to your mind when you think about terrorism. And really, if you want to have an opinion about that, you need to earn it.
And I think everything needs to be questioned. I mean, people
really
don't go out there and question everything. I mean, even what we say should be questioned. You shouldn't be listening to everything being like, this is the truth.
Yeah, if someone relatable to you or acceptable to you tells you something, you just accept it offhand. As long as someone comes at you with enough conviction, you can really sell that. Like the preacher who thought he found doomsday, and then he went and told all those people, and they sold all their stuff, and that was last week's episode right here.
Yeah.
It's coming from that source. It's, and that's been abused.
So you notice that people with a lot of charisma are easily able to utilize hysteria to manipulate people.
And they get really great jobs as politicians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we look at most recent debates, and realistically what's happening is they're using, people's fear that they need a new leader. And I mean, it ties back what you said into that episode. It ties into people's fear. It ties into people needing someone to look up to. They feel like they need somebody to be in charge of everything. And what's happened? You're given this choice now. You are in control. That is actually a form of hysteria as well, where you're saying, whoa, I have a lot more power than I thought I did. However, is that power real power? It's an elusive
It's temporary power. It's a harness, because the
Well, I mean,
the modern day idea of power has changed, because you can't just go in and strong-arm yourself all the time because you've got reparations of other people involved in the situation. So this is really a good way to harness that and use the power of media and opinion to create this new system of getting everyone to focus then behind that idea.
Well, it reminded me of something a guy named Humble the Poet said. He said, you take a cookie, you split it in half, and you expect people to vote on one or the other, right? They're both equal parts of the cookie.
Yeah. And there is an end game at work in America.
So now, ultimately, how do we make sure people don't go, extremely hysterical, don't fall into these traps? I think you should do one of two things. Question everything.
Well, you gotta know what's relevant, and what's possible, and then know fundamentally how you would like to react to that, and that in part relies on a lot of your own knowledge of the situation. And if you don't know anything about the situation, then you are going to be hysterical if anything comes up because there's no response to it.
And you have to be prepared for such things as well.
Yeah. Which is, animals in the wild will go hysterical over certain things that they don't know how to comprehend. We are the same way in that. If you don't have a natural response to the situation, you haven't learned it, or you had a precursor to, go back to, then you're going to panic. And you're going to trample little old ladies when Godzilla crashes through Tokyo. And, that's just the goddamn Japs' fault.
And you know what helps with hysteria more than anything is tea. Keep calm. Drink a cup of tea.
I don't recommend trying to make tea while Godzilla's ripping through a city. But if you've got some downtime.
I think we're at a point in the discussion where we realize we identified what hysteria is, be it an emotional or chemical imbalance, based on somebody giving you something you don't know how to respond to, right? It's your natural response thing. Animals do the exact same thing. Secondly, that hysteria has been and continues to be utilized executively for war and actually trying to convince someone. And like we mentioned, these people that are very charismatic usually jump into jobs like, politics and try and sell and convince you based on creating a fear-based platform on actually getting you to jump on board.
Well, I think we're almost at the end of our discussion. So we can probably draw on a few key things. Cite your sources, or have the gall to go out and actually frickin' research them. 2, question things that leads you back to number 1. And 3, don't be so hard on Godzilla, because, really it wasn't his fault.
He's just a freedom fighter.
Godzilla was a freedom fighter. Godzilla was a hysterical animal that didn't know what to do with being too big.
Yeah, actually, what would you do if you were thrown into a city and all these little ant-like things were like throwing things
and your
at
brain
you?
wasn't big enough to comprehend the situation because you were a mutated radioactive lizard that was a result of a nuclear test. That's not his fault.
No. It was the Japs.
It was the goddamn Japs.
Mind you, we love the Japanese. If you watch that one episode where we were talking about, what was it? Perseverance. You'll find we love making fun of people.
Good talk.
Yeah. Alrighty, so, Boba Fett seems a little preoccupied.
Oh, our beeper didn't go off.
So, hopefully you guys enjoyed our episode. This one's on hysteria, and if you guys have any questions or even suggestions for next week's episode, or the week after that, be sure to put them down in the comments, and if you're going to make a video response, make sure you're drinking tea, or we just can't take you seriously.
That's true. Hot chocolate will not suffice. We also have a new picture file on Facebook that you can leave pictures of our new 3, 2, 1 intro. And if you send in pictures of your 3, 2, or 1, we will use them in the next episode's introduction. So,
yeah.
Cheers.
Have a good one, and if you guys are inclined, be sure to subscribe. High five! 9/11! Too soon? Just